In 2022, I went down the rabbit hole of liminal spaces. I'm still not sure why. I usually have trouble sleeping. They are representatives of forlorning and the surreal. Often described as uncomfortably familiar yet impossible to distinguish, these places can at times act as the medium between worlds. I especially like this one. It's become quite a celebrity. The best of these spaces lack clear markers of identity or ownership. It's supposed to be a subjective experience. The TVA has become a subjective experience, a liminal space with details that give it shadow. I took note of the shadows I saw in these episodes, and I'd like to discuss how this show is changing my attention to it. How would you react if you could see yourself from the outside? And what do you know about shadows? What do you want to know? I like to think of shadows as the stains of living in the present. In Book 5 of Plato's Republic, Socrates tells Adeimantus about the disciplined character of the philosopher's gaze. For he, Adeimantus, whose mind is fixed upon true being, has surely no time to look down upon the affairs of earth, or to be filled with malice and envy, contending against men. His eye is ever directed towards things fixed and immutable. Shadows, like gravity, are one of the only few things that transcend time and space. They are a receding truth onto surfaces, a static depiction of the complex, and are conveniently easy to ignore. Luckily, they are everywhere, for all time, always, and behind the fabric of Loki Season 2, their presence is growing too large to ignore. For Marvel, this is a sign of greater clarity coming back into relevance, finally. When these characters acted on the stage in years prior, the purpose they received was residual, but after stumbling through the lights of finality, it felt like Marvel forgot how to see its own shadow, and weeding through the winter was laboring. To bring back its shadow, it all had to start somewhere, and for Loki, it does. It starts here, where we left off, an introduction to the end of the beginning, to clarity of purpose, as fragile as it is glorious. When Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson were announced as the directors of Loki Season 2, cautious optimism was the most prominent optimism. After a renowned first go-around with a unified vision, the fears of new fingerprints on this winning formula put pressure on the penultimate second season to deliver something different. Creative control has always been a desirable trait for any project lead in this universe, but this was the first show to receive a sophomore spin, and the stakes were clear from the jump. Continue to build out the TVA as an entity, realize the opportunities for Loki as a narrative force on the macro, and elevate upon Kang in hopes of washing out the taste of Quantumania. Finding a balance between dread and discovery is not a challenge I wish on my favorite directors, but something in the air here feels thick. Maybe it's the consistency of clutter between aged bookshelves or the thrum of an office building that has never been given a sound until it was required. The experience of characters discovering their shadows inside this particular office is mesmerizing. The attention to detail is mesmerizing. This is not a sequel that seems interested in patting itself on the back to welcome in the second attempt at our time, and for that I am grateful. The threat of He Who Remains against Loki's clock that never stops ticking is a well-seasoned subplot that needed the right shepherd. It's from here that we understand the grasp Aaron and Justin have on this story, and how evolving it means more than repeating old frames of reference. Simplicity without losing insight was a highlight throughout Season 1, and here things continue as they are, though noticeably aged for the benefit of all. The best art grows older with its audience. In the simplest terms, to be truly present in everything, everywhere, all at once, Loki had to challenge its fidelity. It starts on the visual level. Above harsh, irritable oranges but beneath tranquil seafoam blues, inevitability feels inconsequential, and consequences feel like collateral. There is always space afforded for the latter in the ledger. The texture of this TVA canvas is designed to drip off the frame. There's a reason this rendition looks the way it does. For a world that's far removed from modernity, the occasional odds between the shadows are as mundane as they are integral. Loki Season 2 is pulling its weight in all the right spaces, liminal and otherwise. It's choosing to craft something subtly unique, and I mean that word intensely. The idea of being unique tends to elicit comparisons, the wrong tool for the right message. Season 2 doesn't feel unique. It feels different, in all the important ways. It is a textbook example of what we mean in world building as commit to the bit. From handhelds to locked perspectives, the switch between intensity of the heart and of the mind is how a creative vision finds unity. That's how shadows work. They're a raw outline of greater definition, but still intimate to the source. The purpose of this sophomore album is clear: to let the clock tick away in the background and maintain focus on the foreground, to shine a light on the sensitivities that make each hand move the way they do across the dial. The shadows are everywhere, precursing the infant flames of crystallized time, or serving in the apprehension of XO5. To a life that was lost, or for one that is suddenly worth gaining, shadows all do one thing better than anything else. They loom. Loki Season 2 is an experience that looms everywhere, and it is eerie. I really enjoy that. The semantics behind this new Loki are responsible for the atmosphere that entrances this very short season, and we're only about halfway through. It seems a push into 70s sci-fi horror was on the table for consideration after the keys to this kingdom changed hands. I mean that phrase in more ways than one. It's clear they've allowed Hiddleston to run with it, and his energy and presence under the warning light of Kang has sold me on even the smallest details. He has always been good at disseminating the unnerving. The confidence to tell a story that feels contained between those in the know without losing the ramifications for a larger universe is a strength of these new directors. The reason I avoided reviewing Secret Invasion was because there was nothing intriguing to discuss. In the first episode, I could find the parameters of the story and the limits of its creativity, where Loki is very much the opposite. Marvel used to know how to play in on itself, how to bend the rules by using the hidden magic of writing that created interesting dilemmas from overlooked interiors, and it always circled back around in larger ways. Here it feels the same, like everything is in play and the people responsible for it clearly know what they're doing. Ouroboros. I believe you can tell everything about a story in the first 15 minutes of its beginning, and everything about Loki is drastically more alive. I appreciate how Kang's revelations are disorienting the dynamics amongst the cast, rightfully platforming Loki as the voice of reason. A play on the god of mischief is good character work. To send Loki back into the past of the same timeline and not a different TVA like many had theorized is the creative wit that's deserved for a Kang story, as he casts the ultimate shadow on his own, and under the spotlight the other characters will cast their own. Where Loki shadowed Mobius as a victim of circumstance in Season 1, he now has taken the title of partner, a funny switch on the paradigm. The crafted ebb and flow of excellent cinematography and meticulous color grading reinforces the dreamlike escapades that are selling viewers on its authenticity. Dreams are just shadows of experiences, and it seems Loki is finally starting to see his own. Ontology is a branch of metaphysics that asks the question, what is the nature of existence, and how do we determine it? It's an effort to cast a light on abstracts and establish their classifications. It's about the shadows falling from the perspectives of experience. I appreciate the amount of room given to these characters to mull over the nature of such a question. The show never strays away from the psychology of such a simple conversation. It also helps when there are new rules in play without overriding old ones. There is a larger story that's being told in little pieces, but everyone is getting a chance to step into their shadows, and what might be the most important of all is doing so whilst elevating the final boss, and making that journey the scariest part. The dormant corners of this disconnected office space present very different considerations. For a god of mischief who's only ever been afraid of the lies of the past, what happens when you confront him with absolute truth? To spend an eternity as the hero of your own story and end up nowhere, to being in nowhere and embracing yourself as the villain, there is poetry in the imaginary. There is subtext because of dialogue that's considerate, gracefulness in the magnitude of the unthinkable, charm in the sensitivities of all scales, and richness in the innovations of an established vision. It has been quite some time since I felt gripped by the imagination of a Marvel project, and this is a long-winded attempt at conveying that appreciation. Because the story affords intimacy without neglecting the larger picture, I felt compelled to step back and observe it as it moves. To make something so infinite feel full of weight and personally attach it to those who matter, it's the shadows of reality inside the TVA that have garnered my attention. From the Twilight Zone to 70s horror and even a mix of True Detective, Loki Season 2 feels like an oil painting of ambitious perspective being the operative word throughout all of it. I especially like this last moment from last week's episode. As the shadows of true realities drift into the void, frozen in time, so does the eternity of this liminal space, and the shadows within it. All of them, frozen in time, fading against the wall, except for one. Good art inspires, and Loki is inspiring. This is nice. And as always, thanks for watching.